Just Eff It. Hi, I'm Romy.
Hi, and I'm Carla.
And together we are the
Eff It
Madres. We are here to invite you guys into stories of some inspiring madres
who have changed their lives through an Eff It moment. So here we go.
Just Eff It. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Sometimes it's just a little too twin-like for me, Carla. Sometimes
I know.
I'm just
like that video of us literally drinking at the same time. I was like, oh my God.
Even editing one of our episodes the other day, I was like, wow, we look a lot alike in this. And it's rare that I catch those moments, but I was like, it's very, very strange. Good morning, you guys. Happy Monday. If you are tuning in with us, we are the Eff It Madres, and this is a podcast that interviews and shares stories of other amazing madres about their Eff It moments. So Eff It moments that they are having, want to have already had, are in the fucking middle of it. So we will be dropping some F-bombs if your children are around. Just a warning.
Yes. Warning.
Warning sign.
All righty. Who are we bringing in?
So this is actually another really great friend of mine. She goes to church with me. She's been going to church with me at Church of East for the last, I want to say 4 years. Her name is Allison. And Allison is a foster madre. And that's how she became a mom. That is her journey of motherhood. And I'm excited to kind of hear about how she got into all of that. She's just such a positive light at church and like with the children. And she has such a big heart, and she's doing things that I don't know if I could do. So I'm excited to, hear her journey and her fuck it moment. So
yeah, I'm excited too. Fostering has got to be tough, but very rewarding, I'm sure. But it takes a special heart to do that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I wouldn't, the attachment and then having to let go at times, so.
Yeah.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
But I wanted to bring you in and introduce you. We were talking about how you became a mama, a madre, and you became a madre through fostering, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to get into a little bit of questions and get to know a little bit about that process.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I wanted to wear this shirt. The y'all means all, and it's two little cowboys in it.
I love that.
That's cute.
Allison, what do you do? What do you do first? What's your job here?
So I am in the mental health policy space, but I'm a licensed social worker, but I've always done more macro social work. So it's a long way to say that I work in the advocacy space.
I love that.
Okay.
I was trying to explain it, but you just did a much better job.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of hard to explain.
All right. So we'll start our bits of questions. When did you decide to Eff it, and why?
Yeah, whenever Romy shared these questions with me, I kind of thought about what my moment was. And I think for background, I've always known that I wanted to adopt in some way. I've always felt that was going to be part of my story, even before I met my husband. Whenever we were 19 years old, we've been together since then, and we're now in our 30s. But I've always just had that desire. And so, I didn't really know what that would look like. And as I've gotten older, my heart has just been really involved in social justice in different ways. I'm a social worker, like I said, and I've always just been interested in, the social challenges that we have in our country and, of course, in the world. But long story short, one of my best friends in the whole world worked at Child Protective Services. And so as we started to think about, okay, what does our family look like for us? How do we want to grow a family? We were talking about adoption, and should we, try to have a biological child, or should we try to adopt, or should we foster? We spent a lot of time talking to different people about it, and we just really felt that we wanted to become foster parents first. And if that led to adoption, great. If it didn't, that we really felt that we could sit in that space and be in the in-between, which looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, we were so naive. We just didn't really know completely what it would feel like, but I think at the time we just felt that we could do it. And so that was in 2019. And I just kind of had this epic moment of that I don't know if later I will want to, be pregnant and try to have a biological child. That's not going to stop us from moving forward with fostering and seeing where that goes. And so that was kind of the moment for me, because I think so many people were asking us, well, does this mean that you're not going to have biological kids? Or does this mean that this is like what y'all are going to do forever? And we just kind of said, this is what we're doing right now. We don't know what this will look like. And I think if anything, is a constant in foster care, it's that there is no constant and that there is no certainty
Yeah.
of anything. But yeah, that was kind of our effort moment. My effort moment was just kind of being like, I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but I'm going to give up this control and see what happens, because I do feel like our hearts are open to kids without knowing, how long they will be with us. And so that was in 2019. And we went through all of the trainings. There's actually, for people who don't know, mandatory trainings that you have to do. It ended up being over 40 hours of
Oh
trainings
my gosh.
that were, that took place on Saturdays, a CPR class, first aid. You do a background check, you do a home study, everything that you can pretty much do to share that you're a safe and, a safe home, but literally like have your home inspected, do a 3-hour interview, which is called a home study, with someone that comes to interview you and your partner, both together and separately. It's really intense.
Would you, I'm curious, because that whole process with them
Mhm,
going through whether you guys are a good home, right, for a
mhm,
child, it does make me
mhm.
feel good to know that they did all of this. That they took this
Yeah.
much time in making
Mhm,
sure that you guys had,
mhm.
a good home.
Yeah,
Like, I didn't know that they
definitely.
did all that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, people would always make jokes like, well, we didn't have to do all that, and you just, have a baby,
Right.
biologically. But it's like, I totally understand why they do it, because kids in foster care have experienced trauma. And so they really want to make sure that foster parents and adoptive parents are prepared for it.
Yes.
So we do a lot of training on how to navigate, different behaviors and what attachment styles mean, and a bunch of really cool stuff that I do think other parents should learn too.
Yeah.
For
Um,
sure, yeah.
but it was definitely just, a lot of work that went into kind of before a child even came into our home.
You know,
Wow.
you saying that, like, how parents, almost all of us probably could benefit from really putting
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
that much work into being prepared to, like, raise our children and deal with their, like,
Mm-hmm.
putting that much effort and time, and really, like, you wanted this. You really wanted this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. You really wanted this child, and you took it
Mm-hmm.
serious, you and your husband, and you
Mm-hmm.
got really prepared.
Right. And that was something we both felt really strongly about, was that we really wanted to be able to tell our, child or children, depending on if we
Yeah.
did adopt, that we wanted to be able to tell them that they were our first choice, that we really, chose them. And so that was also another reason why, at least for us, it felt right for us to try that before, trying to have biological children.
Yeah. And if you did have
Hmm.
biological children,
Hmm.
I would assume your adopted children too would feel very chosen and special and a
Yeah.
part of that. I think that's really beautiful. I'm
Hmm.
curious, when you finally had that moment where you said, "Eff it, we're gonna
Hmm.
we're gonna foster, we're gonna go through this, we're gonna make this our
Hmm.
family." What is it that you did about it, other than going through all of the,
Hmm.
I assume, hours and training? Like, what was it that you guys, or you as a mother, really did to
Hmm.
get ready for this?
Yeah, I think there's like so much preparation that you can do, for your home, for your life. But then I really think that honestly, that didn't feel totally like preparation until we actually got the call of, y'all were chosen. We're bringing 2 kids to your home in 3 hours. That was really where I felt like, which really
Wow.
did happen to us.
Yep.
And it was two. And so I think we really had, kind of that you can be prepared in so many ways. But I honestly don't think I was really prepared for what those feelings would be once it actually happened. And I think, again, like an epic moment for me was not knowing how long they were going to be with us, not
Yeah.
knowing, what the future was going to hold, but being like, when I saw them, I like felt such a strong connection. I like instantly felt this protective maternal instinct, that I've heard like other foster and adoptive parents describe too. And so it's really interesting because I felt that like really strong connection like right off the bat,
Mm.
um, for sure.
Wow.
I can't imagine in like so with like pregnancy, right, Carla? We have time to prepare. We know it's coming. Like we have
Mm-hmm.
months to kind of get ready for that. But like, hey, in 3 hours you have two kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also gonna say, even like us prepare,
Yeah.
having a biological kid, you can only prepare. It's like going to college. You absorb
Mm-hmm.
all this like theory, but you really don't know until you step out into the
Mm-hmm.
real world and get like hands-on experience what it's
Yes.
really about. And so that I was just like, oh my gosh, yes, you can never really prepare for a child, two children, three children, anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Biologically, not biologically, no one's
Yeah.
prepared when the
Yeah.
children and
No.
you've
Mm-hmm.
never had a baby comes to your
Yeah. But
house and you
two,
have
wow.
a two, right, and you've got to keep them alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
never sleep, you know.
We joke that we like jumped into the deep end, with two toddlers during a pandemic. We had
Yeah.
no idea because we were licensed, in April of 2020. So
Oh,
this was
wow.
like when none of us knew what was going on. We were
Oh,
like
wow.
wiping our groceries down. Remember like those early
Yeah.
days?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they were placed with us in May. And so the first month that they were with us, we had no daycare.
Oh,
And we were both still working, remotely. And luckily, we were able to, have someone help us and come over and nanny for us 4 hours a day. But again, that's other thing. That's
that's what I was
another
gonna
kind of
say. Isn't that
hurdle.
a whole process for you guys to have? I was telling
Yes.
Carla, you can't just
Yeah.
have anyone come help you, right?
No. So we had to, have a certified babysitter, which luckily this person, we'd already talked about things and she was in between jobs. And so it really worked well for her, because she's a social work student. But yeah, it was definitely jumping into the deep end and not really knowing what we were doing. For sure, kind of that. It was like, I think two effort moments was like one, making the decision to
Mhm.
foster. And then I think saying yes to
Yeah.
a call and then like being like, okay, we're going. This is happening.
Yeah.
So you couldn't even have like your own family members take care of them as like a babysitter? Like they had to be certified.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
Wow.
not like a super in depth process, but it's really just to protect the kids, that you
Yeah.
have to do a background check, CPR first aid, and then sign, like a discipline policy. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough because that's so limiting to what you're able to
Yeah.
do if you need help and go out and like you have to
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's just like a handful of people. Hopefully that's
Mm-hmm.
more, but that's
Well,
tough.
on
Yeah.
top of being in the middle of a pandemic where you're already limited to who's coming in and out of your home and who's
Yeah.
around your family, you have two new babies. And then on top of it, you can't
Mm-hmm.
just open your home up to any friends and family to come over and help you guys. You both were still working,
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah.
at home, and you have two
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
little babies that you now are also figuring out, right? Like how to be a parent, just like any of us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how were you feeling? Like what sorts of emotions were you like once you saw
Mm-hmm.
the children and just kind of like, what with all of this? How were you
Mm-hmm.
feeling with it all?
I mean, I honestly think it changed day by day. But I think there were like these really high moments of like we're having fun, everyone is laughing, things are going really well. It feels like we're like bonding. And then there were also like low moments where, it didn't feel like things were going well or we felt overwhelmed because, the kids did have some, we could tell that they had some attachment challenges. And so I think it was really hard to see that. It was like emotionally draining.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we feel so much more prepared now that we've been doing this for a while. But I think just at the beginning, it was, kind of an emotional roller coaster. I was still learning how to kind of cope with that on top of, at the time, I really was like, I just want to be treated like every other mom. I just want to be
Yeah.
like a mom, you know? And I think I've had to like grapple with that and know that like because of foster care and just the needs that are there, like right now, I'm just in a different space, but that doesn't make me less of a mom or not a mom. You know, it's just that it looks different for me in some ways.
I'm curious to know for when I don't know anything about fostering. So in regards
Mm-hmm.
to a time frame, do you
Yeah.
have to have like a minimum amount of time that you foster
Mm-hmm.
a child, or is it like kind of open ended?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carla. So, one, it's different by state. Like, different states have different rules and policies, and that's what can sometimes make it complicated. You know, you think you know what's going on, but then it's actually a different policy than maybe you were expecting. But you're told a certain amount of information at the beginning of a case, and you kind of have to work off of that. But things really do change. They can change day by day, they can change, you know, month by month. And I think we had some information about the kids when they came into our care. We did know why they were in care. They had actually been with another foster family before us, and so we knew a little bit about that. But then with our the child that's with us right now, he's been with us for over a year, and so
Yeah.
there has been a bunch of changes with his case, and so like legally, there are all of these things that have to happen, and so you're really kind of just this safe holding place for a child to attach, to feel, you know, that secure attachment and bonding with you while they're trying to either help their parents get, you know, things figured out with their life and what, you know, was the reason for removal. And it really varies. And at the same time, they're trying to find a safe family member for the kids to go be with.
That's
And
always
so,
first priority, right? That they want to I
mm-hmm,
in foster, because my sister does this as well, where they want to get the child back to the family.
yeah,
They want to get the child
mm-hmm,
back to someone in the family.
mm-hmm,
So they do take that time while you're with the child to work on
mm-hmm,
that process. That's the goal,
mm-hmm,
right? And
yes,
so with what she was asking, it just depends, right? It just
yeah,
depends on every. Is
mm-hmm,
there a certain amount of time where if you're fostering for so long that they end
mm-hmm,
up saying
mm-hmm.
this is
Yeah, so that's a tricky part of it, and that's kind of where we are right now with our case is that, you know, things are coming to the end. A decision has to be made on some of the permanency goals and something has to be decided.
right?
But as a foster parent, you're not a legal party in the case in Texas. So it's challenging. We could hire a lawyer and it's called intervene, but we don't feel that that's the right choice for us right now. We really want to like let things play out. And that's what, you know, makes this like a hard space to be in. And I know, Romy, you've said like to me several
Yeah.
times at church, like, I don't know how you do this. And my response is always like, I don't know how I do this.
Well,
Like,
and what I mean by that, so people know, is that you do this, my sister does this, and I've seen you be
mm-hmm,
with children and then them go back to their family, which is ultimately what you were supposed to do, right? Like to help
mm-hmm,
keep that child safe in the in
mm-hmm,
between and then
mm-hmm,
bring them back to their parents. Now, as a mother, and I want to revisit this because you said this and I think it's important, Allison, like you
mm-hmm,
are a mom, you're a mother, and
mm-hmm,
we all are different. We all come to motherhood in different ways.
mm-hmm,
But that's why I was so excited to have you on as well, because it's a story of motherhood. It just might look different than my story or
mm-hmm,
Carla's story, but you know,
mm-hmm,
this is your journey of motherhood, and I think it's beautiful. But when I've asked you at church, I'm like, I that attachment you're explaining that you feel for a little baby, and then you're
mm-hmm,
there through the, your heart maternally is connecting, and then to have to give them
mm-hmm.
back, which is so beautiful and so selfless.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit of that for me, because that's the part
Mm-hmm.
that I'm always like, it takes a special
Yeah.
human to do that.
Yeah, it's so funny because people do say that, and then I'm like, well, I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm not saying I'm good at that part because I was asked to be on a panel for foster parents that are going through the classes. And, one of the questions that they asked was, how do y'all handle
Mm-hmm.
when kids leave? And the other foster parent on the panel, she had this like beautiful, eloquent response. And then I was like, honestly, y'all, it sucks.
Yeah. Yes, like that's the
um,
truth, right? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think it's grief, and I think like for me being, in the mental health field and understanding like grief and trauma a little bit more, it's like it is a grief. It's a unique grief because they're still alive. Obviously, they're
Yeah.
still out there in the world and you're happy for them and you're so happy that they are able to be with family, but then you will always miss them. And at least how I feel is like I'll always feel connected to them.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed to like ever reconnect with them, right? Like
Well, that's really up to their family.
oh,
And so with our first children, we sent them this, like when they left, we sent them this book that I had printed pictures of, mostly just of them, of their time with us, different
Aw.
memories. And then I did include a few pictures with like me and or both of us in them, but not a lot. And then at the end, we wrote a note that, was like, we've loved having you with us, something about our memories together, like we'll always treasure them, or something like we love you, we want the best
My
for you,
heart.
or
I
something.
know. I'm like my heart right
yes.
now.
um, but we did put our last names, and it's like I do still have a phone number with their relative that they're with, and so part of me does hope for that. And John and I talk about that. What are they like? What are they going to be like in, when they're teenagers? And part of me hopes that they do reach out.
Imagine
Yeah.
though, like later down the years, if one of them did. I mean, that would just like
I just got chills.
I
Like,
know, like tears in
oh
my
my
eyes. I'm like,
gosh.
because I just couldn't
Yeah.
imagine like hearing from one of them later and like just saying hi and like reaching out to you, and
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
were a part of making sure that
Mhm.
they were okay, making sure that they
Mhm.
were
Yeah.
loved, making sure that they were cared for in
Mhm.
a moment in their family's life when they needed help. And
Mhm.
there's absolutely zero. I mean, everybody at some point, whether it's to the extreme or not, sometimes just needs help. And it's like
Yeah.
that, it takes a village. And
Mhm.
you guys are part of that for kids' lives, their stories. I mean, it's beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It
That's
is. Like I got so
amazing.
emotional.
Yeah.
My next question would be then when you guys decided to do this and kind of
Mhm.
going into it, but like what did this do for your family, and your family being what did
Mhm.
this do for you and your husband? What did this
Mhm.
do for you guys in your marriage?
Mhm. That is a really good question. I think it's interesting because it happened it happened like during the pandemic, and so I think we made a lot of jokes like, is this parenthood or is this the pandemic? Is
Right.
this,
Right.
I think it was hard at first to, navigate that parenthood wasn't what we were expecting it to be because of the pandemic. And then I think once we kind of figured out those expectations, there was this sense of we're in this together, like doing the typical stuff that like a lot of parents do. You take pictures during the day, and then at night when they're asleep, you look at the pictures and are like, oh, they were so cute.
Yeah.
It's like we do that stuff too.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like there were, of course, like hard times. Both of us have our strengths and our weaknesses of like what each of us is better at. And with our first children, each of them was more attached to one of us. And so that
Oh,
was hard. So we were trying to navigate those dynamics and make sure that they were getting their needs met. And we were working very hard to try to help them connect with the other parent.
did it bring you and him closer?
I think so, because we were like on a team trying to figure things out together, and I think the second time, like with our kiddo now, it feels in a way like so much easier because of different
Yeah.
reasons. Like we know a little more about parenting. We like more things are open, obviously. So it's felt very different, even just, being able to go to church and see people every week, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think for us, we both really want to be parents, and that was something that we knew early on in our relationship. So I'm very thankful that we're both on the same page about it, especially about, like, there have been some times where things have come up that he's reminded me, like, we can get through this. We have been through hard things. Like, yes, this is really hard, but like, we will get through it, which sometimes I need to hear whenever I get frustrated or tired.
He seems like, your husband and who I know and see just like he's just such a good, he's always there with your kids, hands
Mm-hmm.
on, feeding, running around through church on Sunday. And you guys just,
Mm-hmm.
it's really sweet. It's just so sweet to see both of you guys, show up that way and be, I don't know if this is, thrown
Mm-hmm.
into parenthood
Yeah.
together in the middle of the world being in such an already scary place, and parenthood
Mm-hmm.
already being a scary thing. And then the fragileness to the extra level of you can't really like mess up. You know what I mean? Because I think as
Mm-hmm.
parents, like when it's your own kid, sometimes like you guys had more looking down on you about how you did things. And that kind of pressure would be that would be, I imagine, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Do any fears come up for you through this process?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
a second part of that question is like, how do you stay in this like F it moment, continuing on with
Mm-hmm.
this decision to continue? I mean, you said like you might not do it forever, but like right now,
Mm-hmm.
how do you keep like trucking along?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the fears, they're there every day, for sure. I mean, I've told multiple friends that if our little guy leaves, that I like won't be able to get out of bed, and that I
Mm,
will need people to like come, help me. But it's like, I think that also comes with like how much we love him, care for him. And so it's like, I'm just trying to remember that each day when I see like things that he's doing and learning and growing, it's like I'm trying to remember that and keep that at the forefront, rather than not knowing the future and not being certain. And I think that kind of like continual effort moment is just honestly the alternative. Like, I would hate to have like known that he would be moved multiple places maybe if
yeah.
someone hadn't been consistent or didn't
Yeah.
say yes, if that makes sense. And so it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, sometimes I have to be philosophical about it or else I do get like it gets
Right.
really hard. Um
Because you've had
yeah.
him for how long now?
Um over a year, 13 months. Mhm.
Wow.
But I'm saying that's a special heart because that's such an attachment, and you're there for so many milestones, and you guys are there watching that happen, and you're a part of that. And then, yeah, having to remind yourself through it why you're doing it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
curious when you said that too. Like, is do foster parents, like sometimes when it goes
Mhm.
that long, if they decide they just can't do this anymore, would they then put the child in another home?
So I do know of that happening.
Okay.
Wow.
So
Like, I
you
think,
pushing through is keeping this child in
yeah.
one home. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what I think we've tried to remember, because I do know of people that, it's for different legal reasons, like the
Hmm.
case has been extended multiple times, and, things that I don't really fully understand, like the legal part of it. But people being like, we don't know that we can keep doing this, or maybe, children's behaviors become really tough, for
Yeah.
different reasons.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we've tried to not judge other people for like the choices they've had to make for their family, but we feel really strongly like that we didn't want to do that unless like it was something that we absolutely had to do. So even when, like my therapist, when I've talked to her about it, she's like, okay, so the alternative, when you say you're not feeling strong enough for this, well, the alternative is that, he leaves. And I'm like, well, I don't want that because of a
Hmm.
decision we made. And she's like, well, then your other decision is to keep going.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like it's kind of like I just try to power through, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a strong thing though, to be able to like know in your heart as you're going through those difficult times and as you get closer and more attached, that the alternative is him not be
Mm-hmm.
in the same home. And I can't even imagine for the children, young, older, who are being placed as we get, being
Mm-hmm.
placed in multiple homes, and that type
Mm-hmm.
of trauma that would create.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
additional from the original, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like
Placement.
every move is a
Yeah.
trauma. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
also why sometimes kids are in care longer, is because they're really trying to make sure that if they do move, that it is the right move. And so it's kind of this double-edged sword, for lack of a better term. It's like they're in care longer so that they can make sure that it's the right choice to the right place, the safe place where they will stay. But then that also means they're in care longer with a foster family where they're getting that attachment there. So it's really tough. And I don't know any answers, y'all. Like, people ask me like all the time, what would you do to improve things? And I'm legitimately like, I don't know, y'all.
You're just figuring it out and
Yeah.
getting through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does the foster system provide mental health services for the
Mm-hmm.
children as well, like
Mm-hmm.
a family or individual and family therapy?
So they do for children. I
Mm.
don't know about for the family. We've actually
Mm.
not had children old enough that could have done that
Mm.
service, but I know for sure for children, yes, like all
Mm.
of their medical and mental health care is covered.
Is
Okay.
provided.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where it gets hard too, is that like when they are older and that trauma
Mm-hmm.
is built and those
Mm-hmm.
behaviors are more difficult, right,
Mm-hmm.
than a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, isn't that kind of when the homes aren't as long, the families aren't as long? It's so difficult
Yeah.
because the trauma keeps building, and then you're built
Mm-hmm.
like it just, and that breaks my heart thinking about that,
Mm-hmm.
because they're still trying to navigate through their healing and their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Their brains are still developing, their hearts, every emotional thing is still, they're young.
Yeah.
Especially as teenagers, the hormonal
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
changes too. That's got to be really tough.
Totally. And I think that's why the agency that we work with, like, they care so much about learning those trauma informed behaviors, like,
Yeah.
or for us to be able to respond as parents. It's called trust based relational intervention, or TBRI. And honestly, a lot of the things that you learn in there work for like any child or any kid.
Mm.
But they really, really want parents to be as prepared as they can so that those unintended moves don't happen, and so that you can be consistent um, and not have to, um, say that a child needs to be moved, because that's
I
not
do.
what any of us want.
Right.
No, no. It's
Mm-hmm.
like those kind of questions and that preparation, all that. Again, it's like there's like, so can we just all do that before we have children,
Yeah.
and maybe we wouldn't be in this situation, where we're not prepared
Mm-hmm.
to deal with things, because we've really taken our mental health and all of that
Mm-hmm.
serious. Um, just a little
Mm-hmm.
more focus on that for all everybody bringing children into the world. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that kind of effort and energy and time to really do it as best as you can, which no one can do it perfect. No, I mean, none of
Mm-mm.
us. We're all gonna and I think we all learn we're gonna fail. We're gonna mess up. We
Mm-hmm.
are not perfect, and we don't know what we're doing. But to care enough to try
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I feel all of us are trying to do. I am curious for other moms out there, other women, who are in that place of, should I do this? Is this something I
Mm-hmm.
can do? Is this something for my family? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
advice would you give them to kind
Mm-hmm.
of get to this effort moment and go through it? Like, what would be your advice for somebody in your guys'
Yeah.
shoes? Yeah.
I have a lot of advice.
Good.
Please
Give
share.
it. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of have like a spectrum of things that I think people could do or should do before they kind of make that final decision.
Yeah.
One is to educate yourself as much as possible about trauma, about the foster care system. So there are a ton of resources, even just following adoptees on Instagram. Like, I follow a bunch of
Mhm.
different accounts that are from adoptees or from foster families or from former foster youth. And of course, like some are hit or miss, but a lot of them share a lot of amazing like stories and also like some reality checks. And so I think as much
Yeah.
as possible, talk to people too, follow people, read what they're writing, listen to podcasts, make sure to listen to them from both perspectives so that you can really understand just like what you're getting into before you do it. I also think, offer to babysit for a foster family,
Yeah.
or, you can do the certification and you can do respite care, which is like when you watch foster kids for a weekend for a family so that they can go out of town. We did that before we were licensed. And we've had other friends try that. And I think it's really good for you to see
Yeah.
kind of what does this actually look like? And do I feel that I can, be in this space? And again, not judging it at all. If you're like, hey, right now I don't think I can do this, but I would love to keep babysitting,
Yeah.
or hey, I don't know that this is like where my heart is long term, but I want to be here and support your family. Like that is all that I think people ask for, is that support. And then I think if you kind of decide that you are really going to go all the way and kind of have that effort moment, like make sure that
Mm-hmm.
the agency you work with is the right one for you. And you can go to informationals, you can read about them online, by Googling, foster adoptive agency and then your county name. Um, but really looking into, what they believe in. We picked
Got
our
it.
agency because they support LGBTQ couples, because they support single parents,
Love
and
that.
because they
Mm-hmm.
support, you know, trying to combat racial justice issues that are really part of the system here in Texas. And so we
Yeah.
felt, like, okay, we want to work with them. It feels right. And so, yeah, doing that homework too before you kind of have that final moment of deciding that you're going to go this path.
While we're on this, what would be some things you could share
Mm-hmm.
with any of the, are there any places or
Mm-hmm.
websites, organizations that you would recommend for anyone having those moments to go
Mm-hmm.
to?
I can't think of one.
Yeah.
CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocates. So that is a volunteer who represents the child in court, and they're a volunteer that their only goal is to be there to share what the child's needs are. So every state has that.
Has that.
Even
Okay.
something like that, and asking them what some resources are that you can support. There are some great like LGBTQ groups in Texas. Of course, I'm blanking on them right now, but even just like shelters that,
Mm-hmm.
that help youth that are in between placements. There are so many things that need support all the time.
And then if anybody wants to, you had mentioned it, like help out
Mm-hmm.
without actually being a foster
Mm-hmm.
parent. What are some places and how can people do that?
Mm-hmm.
Listening and they're like, you know what,
Yeah.
I want to give to this.
Yeah. So I do think that there are a lot of organizations, and maybe connecting with a CASA chapter near you could be a great place to start, and asking them if they could connect you to some families. There are some groups that exist. I don't know if they're national, but groups like Foster Angels, that one actually might be more national or by state, but they actually connect volunteers with families, with
Mm-hmm.
foster families, and like they're in charge of helping that family for like a year. And so they really help with babysitting and any needs that the kids have. Um, yeah, I think that there are other versions of that out there. So I think even, kind of Googling foster nonprofit, you know, something like that could help find places, but they exist. And I think in Austin, if you're in Austin, there's something called Fostering Hope. And they
Mm-hmm.
do trainings, they do babysitter, trainings where you can come, do your CPR, do everything that day, and leave being able to babysit for like 10 different agencies.
And I think that's
Wow.
huge. I remember you saying that in church, like if anyone
Mm-hmm.
wants to get certified and like help out. And I remember just thinking, I
Mm-hmm.
never even thought about
Mm-hmm.
that being something like you to get a babysitter or someone to help you, that you would need
Mm-hmm.
kind of a community to help you in that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for anyone who is listening and you want to help or you want to be a part of it, I mean, that really helps the mom. It helps the
Mm-hmm.
family by being
Oh
somebody who
yeah,
can be in there with you guys, you know?
totally.
Carla, do you have any other questions?
No, no. I just said I like you said, it takes a special, I mean, you have a heart of gold to be able to do this. And it's like I hate to say that I don't think I'm capable of it, but like I honestly don't think that I would be able to do that. I do know a family that has fostered kids, and they had two kids the first time around, and then those kids were taken away from them. And
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know, like I just don't know if my heart could handle that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot.
Just a reframe that it's like, just because it isn't what you feel is right for you, like loving and supporting families that are doing it is
Yes.
literally just as important as doing it yourself. So I always try to like kind of reframe people from that, because it's like, y'all, I don't feel like I can do it half the time and still just somehow making it through. Definitely do not have a heart of gold, just have a desire and am willing to put my heart out there.
Well, without people willing to put their heart out there, these children don't have their homes. And so
Mm-hmm.
we, we need more people like
Yeah.
you putting their heart out there. But I think your message is like, even if you're not somebody whose heart is led this way, there are ways to
Mm-hmm.
support and help make this
Yeah.
a better, safer world for children who need homes. And it takes all
Mm-hmm.
of us in
Yeah,
little
I
ways
actually
to
didn't
make that
I didn't
possible. I
know
didn't
that there
know.
were
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that there were all these things that you could do to support foster. I mean, it makes sense, but I just didn't know
Yeah.
that because I'm not in that world. So I'm very
Mm-hmm.
glad that we talked to you, because I'm sure a lot of people are listening that are like, I had no idea that I could
Yep.
help out or become certified to be a babysitter or whatever. So like
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very grateful that you came on to share all this information in your story, because it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna resonate with people for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Yeah.
Allison, we're gonna do a little F it goodbye on here, but I'm gonna grab
Okay.
those if you'll text us those links as well so we can share those
Mm-hmm.
through
Yeah.
our social media so that people can go and check those out and ways that they can help.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, thank you for sharing this information, because
Yes.
if we don't know, we can't
Mm-hmm.
do anything. And sometimes we don't even
Yeah.
know to look that up. And the whole reason this podcast is here too is that through stories, we help other moms learn things. And again, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful because each time I keep learning something new. And right now I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I can be a part of this. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
seconding what she said, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank y'all. Just
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 F
F
F
it.
it.
it.